Hi guys, it's me Quinn, and as always, if you appreciate my content, consider hitting the like button. It's the only way the YouTube algorithm really notices me.
Now, this may come as a shock to a lot of people since I am known as such a big science fiction fan, but up until quite recently, I had never seen the entire Matrix trilogy all the way through. Now, I always knew what the Matrix was, and it was on sometimes when I was a kid, but I kinda just missed the Matrix phenomenon. It never really was a part of my life the way some other things were, and the way it was for a lot of other people. So since the new movie's coming out, I decided, why not sit down, watch the Matrix trilogy, see what the hype is all about. So I guess we'll start with the first movie, which I really enjoyed. The other ones, well, we'll get to it. The first movie was a solid 10 out of 10 for me. I like the way that it poignantly starts with Neo going down the rabbit hole and there's intentional Alice in Wonderland references. It's basically a scenario where we're watching someone's reality unfold right in front of them. The best thing about The Matrix is, it is an action movie, but it's also science fiction in the truest sense of the word. The essential theme of it is questioning one's reality. How do we know that what we consider to be real is actually reflective of what the actual reality of the universe is? And this is, of course, a question that philosophers have pondered for thousands of years. Of course, I'm reminded of Plato's allegory of the cave. It, of course, describes people inside of a cave, chained to a wall, facing the blank face of the wall, and the shadows that move past and create shadows upon the wall, they believe to be reality, but they don't know that these shadows are actually being produced by something, and that something is a totally separate thing from the shadow itself. Now, though The Matrix handles this idea phenomenally, it obviously isn't new to The Matrix. My favorite TV show of all time, Star Trek The Next Generation, has an episode called Homeward, which is basically about this civilization that the Enterprise is saving. They keep them on the holodeck, and the people inside of the simulation don't realize that they're being transferred from their homeworld, which is dying, to a new world. Except one of them gets out, and he has this whole existential crisis, which leads to horrible things happening, but you can watch the episode yourself. The same idea is being explored in The Matrix. One of the things that this episode of Star Trek The Next Generation deals with, as well as The Matrix, is how someone would react to being told or discovering the fact that their reality is not actually reality. I would argue that most people aren't going to have a positive reaction to this. And so in The Matrix, we have the concept of the blue pill and the red pill. You take the blue pill, you go back into the comforting illusion that is the Matrix. You take the red pill, you awaken from this dream, you step off of the holodeck, you join the crew of the Enterprise, you see the truth. But not everybody's gonna want to see this truth. Not everybody is gonna like this truth once they've seen it. And that moves me to the character Cypher, who I thought had an excellent villain betrayal plotline, because he received the red pill at some point and he thought he could handle it, and he spent all these years trying to handle it, but he eventually realized that the illusion was more comfortable. Ignorance is bliss. And that was such an excellent moment in the film, because I think as much as all of us would like to tell us that we could totally handle it if our reality was totally shattered and we found out that this life that we were living was actually a total illusion and that there was a reality on top of this reality, and that reality wasn't too pretty, I don't think that most of us could actually handle it. I think that for a lot of people, maybe even the majority of people, the illusion would be more comforting, the illusion would be preferable. Now, this is a big spoiler if you haven't seen this episode of Next Generation, but the character that leaves the holodeck and discovers the Enterprise and discovers that there is so much beyond what he considers to be real, rather than going back and keeping this secret from his people, never being able to tell them, and also rather than joining the Enterprise and being totally alien to that world, this character commits suicide. His reality is forever tainted, and this is in fact one of the darker Next Generation episodes that was released for Star Trek. Another poignant and excellent idea that The Matrix also brushed on was, if you can't trust your memories, if you can't trust your reality, then how do you know who you are? You are defined by your actions. You are defined by your choices. When everything else is stripped away, that is who you are. And therefore, The Matrix cannot tell you who you are. Regardless of the machines and all their deception and all their calculations, they cannot stop a living human being from being a living human being. The Matrix 1 absolutely 100% succeeded at doing something that most movies that call themselves science fiction totally fail to do, which is give me a story that actually says something about the human condition, because that often gets traded off in movies for other superficial things. And The Matrix is just an incredible balance between amazing, jaw-dropping visuals, even today it really holds up, and just a really solid story, a solid mystery that unfolds itself at an excellent pace, and great characters that ultimately are believable human characters. Now let's get to the sequels, which I did not like nearly as much as the first one, and I will explain to you why. So I think I will just talk about these movies as one because they are just kind of one long story. So the good thing about the last two is that they are visually on par with the first movie, but not much else is on par with the first movie. So the first movie briefly mentioned the last human city of Zion. This is a place where the last humans have gathered. This is the last beacon of humanity. And when I heard that in the first movie, I thought, I hope they explore Zion in the next two movies. And though Zion is in these next two movies, it's not really explored in any satisfying way whatsoever. And that's really sad because a significant portion of time in the second movie is spent in Zion, and an even more significant portion of time in the third movie is spent in Zion, like half of it, and I still don't know anything about Zion, or its people, or its government. I don't know where they get their food from. I don't know how they get the material to build things. For a science fiction story, there are very little actual science fiction things aside from aesthetic things like armor suits and flying robot tentacle monsters. The entire city of Zion was really devoid of any kind of like culture that felt real. It was very generic and really disappointing, shallow, and just undercooked and underthought. I get the impression that after the immense success that The Matrix was, that we had a lot of studio executives coming in and saying that we got to make the next big trilogy. The Lord of the Rings was around this time, and I'm sure someone came in and said, we can't just make a sequel, we got to put this big battle in it, because there's like an hour worth of Zion battling with the robots, and it's really drawn out. But I'm sure someone said we got to put this big battle in because we just had Lord of the Rings, and that's doing really well, and big battles are in, and we got to create the sci-fi version of that, but it's just kind of a mess. The entire story is interrupted by this battle. You see Neo, and we don't see him for an hour, and then we see Neo at the end of the movie. It's really weird and just not well done. The most interesting things in the sequels, I have to say, definitely were in the second movie. The meeting of the architect, I felt, was one of the highlights of the movie. Definitely great acting from this guy. He had a very mysterious, ominous presence on screen, which just made me want to know more. And then the third movie comes along, and then I don't really get to know any more. We do see at the end of the third movie some interaction between the architect and the Oracle, and we come to understand that the architect is like the father of the Matrix, and she's kind of like the mother of the Matrix. So we have a divine masculine figure, a godlike figure, and a divine feminine figure, a mother-like figure. So that was interesting, but it didn't come together as well as I would have liked, and it was just a little bit shallow. And I also thought the ending sequence with Neo was extremely disappointing. This is a minor nitpick, but I don't understand why the Matrix has a city where there's this giant head that comes and talks. I think that was a little bit silly, but even when Neo goes back into the Matrix at the end of the movie, I expected more than this ends with him just fighting Agent Smith again. That's how it ends. He fights Agent Smith again, and then it's over. I was expecting another big reveal, or here's a dark twist, or here's another secret in the Matrix that we didn't consider before. I was expecting more, but what I got was quite frankly a little bit pretentious, because I think the movies, these last two movies, are trying to give the impression that there is a lot of substance here, trying to give the impression that there's a lot of smart things to be said here, but in fact there's actually very little being said in these last two movies, especially when compared to the smash hit lightning in a bottle that was the first movie. And aside from that, pretty much all of the characters in the second two movies are worse. And I think Morpheus suffered the most in those second two movies because he goes from being this mysterious, interesting, and quite frankly badass character to just kind of being this side character that's just here to be like, I believe in Neo, you know, every 15 minutes. And he doesn't really do much else. And that's kind of disappointing. And then you have other side characters like the tech guy that has his girlfriend that he's got to save. Or the teenage kid who they're saying is 16, who looks like 25, who's obsessed with Neo, and it's just like these characters are such cutout cardboard characters that are entirely one-dimensional, and I don't care about them at all, and I would have rather spent more time with the characters that I did care about, like Neo and Trinity, and I would have also liked to see some more expansion on Morpheus's character that was more than just let's give him a girlfriend. So, to end things, I think that a lot of my disappointment with these last two movies is based on the fact that the first movie set such a high bar in my mind that I don't even know if even a good sequel could have competed with it necessarily in my mind, because it's like you can't tell that story more than once, and to expand upon it, you kind of do have to take it into a different direction. But I personally, if I was working on The Matrix 1 and 2, if I had say so, I wouldn't have taken it into this direction, because I feel like this is more of a generic direction. They say it's kind of taking it away from sci-fi and moving it more into that action, adventure, fantasy territory. This felt less like a serious existential sci-fi film, which is what the first one was, and more like an action-adventure epic, more akin to The Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. They were definitely trying to catch that Star Wars audience. They were definitely trying to catch that epic fantasy audience. And I enjoy that stuff, obviously, but that's not what The Matrix was. And I also don't think that The Matrix did it very well. And I'm curious to see what the new Matrix movie is going to be. It could be really good. It could be really bad. I personally feel like the Wachowskis are a bit hit or miss. The Matrix is really good, but then you have Jupiter Ascending, and then you have Cloud Atlas, and then you have, Sense8, which is, a mixed bag. But you see what I mean. Alright, so I really enjoyed watching The Matrix. I had fun viewing the sequels, but they weren't good movies in my opinion. So tell me what you guys thought of the Matrix trilogy, and are you excited for the next movie? I'll go see it, but I'm not, I don't have my hopes up. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more Quinn's ideas.